The second application with respect to the ear and as well as the MR fluid is the dampers. The another role in which ear and as well as the MR fluids devices are demonstrating a greater potential in the dampers for the mechanical vibrations. The variable dampers is a good example for the semi-active devices. The forces generated depends upon the relative motion of the damper piston and as well as the cylinder. A very large forces can be developed with input of only enough control energy to produce a desired fluid yield stresses. Although the aerospace applications such as the landing gear and the helicopter blade lag mode dampers are having the major application with respect to the ER and as well as the MR fluid. The greater interest of the ER and as well as the MR dampers appears to lie with the civil engineering community also, which is actively study in the low vibration mitigation in buildings and as well as the bridges and other similarly massive structures. The important advantage of the use of the semi-active is the electrically controlled dampers of the type discussed here in the civil structure that may be subjected to wind loads and as well as seismic loads or the earthquake motions is that these dampers use a little electric power that it is feasible to operate them, which can be operated by means of the batteries and very easily controlled and works in a what we can say a fail-safe mode. Now, in the dampers where the piston and as a cylinder forms the wall of the gap, the piston plays a major role of the sliding plate. The former arrangement has the advantage that the volume of the damper is constant, while the later the accumulators is usually incorporated to allow the displacement of the fluid by the piston rod. The accumulators introduces some stiffness with a good performances. The next part what we are discussing is with respect to the linear MR devices. Most of the cases what we have discussed in the previous is the clutches, which is nothing but a rotary. The next part what we are discussing is with respect to the linear MR devices. One of the most interesting engineering applications of the MR fluids is that the construction of the smart and as well as a controlled MR linear dampers. The main asset of the MR based dampers is the controllability of the system, which can be adjusted in order to provide the desired level of the damping by simply changing the supply current. The best example for these type of dampers is either it may be a single-ended dampers or it may be a double-ended dampers. The single-ended dampers has only a one reservoir of the MR fluid, which is transferred through the orifice from one chamber to the another chamber. Since the rod volume is adjusted one side, the system accounts for the change in the volume that results from the piston rod movement. In order to accommodate this change, the reservoir volume and an accumulator is usually used. The accumulator provides a barrier between the MR fluid and the compressed gases like usually a nitrogen that is used to accommodate a necessary volume change. Moreover, the accumulator pressure can be used to enhance the performance of the MR systems. The double-ended MR dampers. In the case of the double-ended MR dampers, the piston will be one, but on both the ends, the rods it will be there, which is of the same diameter that protrudes through both the ends of the dampers. In these cases there is no change in the volume of the piston rod movement. A double-ended dampers does not require an accumulator. The application of the single-ended damper is mainly in the case of the vibration suspensions, in the case of the mechanical components like the seat suspensions, or it may be a car suspensions, or it may be industrial vibration suspensions, or even the gun recoiling applications also. The schematic diagram shows the single-ended and as well as the double-ended damper mechanism, which can be actuated either it may be in the single side or it can be in the both the sides depending upon the type of the application. The next one what we are discussing is with respect to the rotary MR devices. The main aim is to obtain a precision control of the braking torque and to transmit the torque. For the transmission of the torque, what we have discussed is with respect to the clutches. For the braking of the torque, the best example is with respect to the brakes with a no moving part, with a very simple varying the current in the coil. The MR based brakes, the magnetic flux path passes through the chassis and the rotating disc, and the fluid is shared between these elements. The braking force depends upon the yield stress of the fluid, making the system a controllable. This is the schematic diagram shows the disc braking systems that it can be used in the case of the vehicles, where the vehicle it can be stopped instantly in the sense without any movement or without any jerk. It can be stopped. The other application, the linear dampers for the real time active vibrational control systems in the heavy duty trucks. As we know that some of the trucks which are having a major application, especially in the case of the mining industries, where the capacity of the trucks will vary more than 100 tons or it may be 200 tons. In those cases, the transmission systems or it may be the suspension systems, what it is required, it should be of the perfect one. In these cases, the MR dampers or it may be what we can say MR type clutches are used to transmit the power. The linear and as well as the rotary brakes for a low cost and as well as accurate positional and the velocity controlled and as well as the pneumatic actuator systems. A very large MR fluid dampers for the seismic damage mitigation in the civil engineering structure is one of the best examples for the civilian field.